All right, and you're both sounding good, so we are good to go there. We still have about 2 minutes till showtime.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
Mhm.
So Matt just hangs out, does all the stuff that, behind the scenes, and he'll be putting into the chat when we're going to break. So you don't have to look at that at all. If you could even turn your chat off if it is distracting for you. Some people like to see it because then they're like, okay.
Oh no, not distracting. I'm able to focus. Yeah, it'll be fine.
You
I don't
have
even
to
know how
be for
to
all the things you do.
I don't even know how to turn it off, Lynsie, either.
Well,
So
quite frankly, I don't either. I give you the option, but I can't tell you how. Okay. And at the very beginning, before I introduce you, I just do a little bit of a drop in for everyone where we can just get kind of centered and present. So it's just a great way for us to connect and for my nerves to settle. And also just as a, just something that everyone gets used to on the show, like, oh, let me just stop, pause, breathe.
love that. It's
Reminder.
lovely.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. And I'm getting used to not printing out. I'm trying to be better about not printing my notes out, but then if internet were to go down, then I'll be like, well, it's okay. We would have a great conversation without notes too.
Yeah. I'm so analog. I gotta print everything out that I have to read through.
I'm the same way. It's really challenging. Well, quite honestly, the reason I didn't print it now is my printer broke. I'm trying to pretend like it's like, oh, I'm trying to be better about this. Uh, uh, mm, mm.
All right, 30 seconds.
Okay, great. Thank you, Matt.
All right, have a good show.
Thank you.
Welcome to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Over the next hour, you will hear raw, honest, and inspiring conversation between Lynsie and her guests, discussing how to thrive, live joyfully, and abundantly in spite of life's challenges. Now, here is your host, Lynsie McKeown.
Hello and welcome to Women Thriving Unapologetically. I am Lynsie McKeown, and I am here today to just really feel into this moment. I mean, and I hope that you'll join us in feeling into this moment because this is what we have right now, right here. And, today we're going to be talking about, what does it really mean to be free and how can we be free in this moment, especially in times that seem uncertain and they're constantly changing. And we might even be questioning if deep healing and transformation is even possible in our world, in the current state of our world. And we have an incredible guest today that's going to help us navigate through these questions and bring us more to this moment and the possibilities of what can happen in our future if we're really willing to just take this moment to be here and to check in and to examine this world within ourselves and outside of ourselves. So before we invite in our guests for today, let's just take this moment to stop, pause, and breathe. So wherever you are, women, whether you're standing or seated or lying down, just take this moment to place your hands upon your body, wherever you feel yourself guided, wherever you might want a blessing or an anointment or just a gentle touch. And then take a deep, full breath in through the nose and out through the nose. And just feel yourself come back home into the body, into this sacred form. And just feel into what would it feel like for you personally, to feel liberated and free. To feel liberated and free in your body, to feel liberated and free in your mind and your emotions. And just notice if there's any resistance that comes up to that. You just continue to breathe in and breathe out, allowing whatever to be here, to be here. And just meet it with the breath. Hold it within the palms of your own hands. And let's just take a deeper breath in and out, and you're welcome to stay here as long as you wish. But I do need to come back and welcome in Kama Tai Mitchell. This woman is incredible. She is a yogi, a certified birth and death doula, which I just bow down to. That is big, big work. She's also an African diasporic dancer. I might have pronounced that incorrectly, Kama, so you'll help me with that one. And cultural healing arts innovator. And Kama has a core belief that living an embodied life is deeply rooted, is like the root of our healing. And she is also the founder and executive director of Rootead Enrichment Center in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Now, this center is focused on reducing epigenetic stress and trauma, destigmatizing mental health, and disrupting intergenerational poverty and disease through generative offerings and collaborations, while intentionally centering the lived experience of BIPOC and LGBTQIA plus folks. She practices and facilitates racial healing circles, wisdom keeping, culture bearing, and is a newer student of traditional West African Ifa, griot, musicology, ancestral healing lineage, and she now incorporates these learnings into her yogic lifestyle. And she identifies as a mixed race, queer, radical abolitionist, and I love this, a grand lover of life and all its natural splendor. Ooh, I need to take a big breath in. That's big flipping work, woman. That is, yes. And so welcome to the show, Kama.
Thank you.
Being here and making the time for us, because after reading all that, you have so many things that you're offering, and it's all coming, like we were talking right before we started the show, and you say you always feel into these things that are coming forward, and you have to have a full body yes. And so you have a full body yes to a lot of things. So can you just tell us a little bit of how this work is coming through you, and why you believe it's coming through you at this point in time?
I think it's hard to say in this point in time, but I think it's about lived experience. Where I come from, where I thought I wanted to go, and now where I'm at. And so I think I have some pretty cool parents. I have a pretty cool family, extended family. And I think being born in the 70s as a biracial person really opened my eyes to some of the things that were happening in the world. I started my journey in Michigan, and then my parents moved me to Texas, and I had my formative years from 7 to 12 were there in Dallas, Texas. And while I was there, my mom won a lottery to put me and my younger brother into a Montessori school that was very well staffed with high level teachers and educators, and they bussed children in from all over the city. And so the amount of diversity that I was able to learn with, socioeconomically, ethnically, racial children was pretty amazing, I think, in comparison to what I see in the education system now. And I think that really set the tone for the way I think and the way I move in the world. And my awakening to humanity started there, I think. A Montessori education in Dallas, Texas, with a very wealthy Jewish best friend and a very poor Mexican best friend, and another multiracial best friend who had a similar lived experience. And then being able to be their best friends for 3 years in the same classroom as Montessori does. All of that, and then the lived experience of my parents and their families and how it rippled down to me, and the way of being really informed how I was going to move in the world.
I love how, when we look back, we can see how life has just really set you up in a beautiful way for the work that you do, and to be able to hold the space that you do. And it's sometimes we look back and feel like it's, our life isn't a blessing, but then we say, oh, well, this is exactly what I needed to be the person I'm meant to be, and to provide the work, allow the work to move through me the way it's meant to move through me.
Absolutely.
So can you tell us a little bit about the work that you're currently doing? You have this organization called Rooted,
Yeah,
which is
yeah,
amazing.
yeah. And just for clarity, the A, if you're going to seek us out, it's Rootead. And we had a brilliant marketing person who was kind of in our circles. We began this journey of nonprofit world, which I didn't intend to do, Lynsie. I was in the food and service industry my whole life. And so it kind of happened by accident based on what I was seeing in community and the liberatory tools I was gaining that I wanted to share. And so that's kind of how it happened that way. And so Rooted came about because my sister cousin and I, both biracial, being raised together in the country of Michigan, rural part of Michigan, on a blueberry farm that my grandfather planted 54 years ago with my uncles and my dad and my aunties and his wife. We were like, we're practicing yoga, we're reaching out to study African diasporic dance to live drums. And quite often we were the brownest people in the room as biracial women. And that was a sticking point for us as we're exploring these modalities that were curated and began by traditional Black and Brown people. So living in the Midwest, there's a different kind of culture here that we've experienced with our travels. We just were like, let's write a little grant and see if we can serve Black and Brown women free, full access to yoga and African dance. And we wrote a grant for $1,000 and they gave us $750. And we ran a 6-week course in a tiny studio north of town. And on week 1, we had one 16-year-old girl. And by week 6, there were 30 women in the room, ages 8 to 80, in this tiny studio, packed in, Filipina, Latina, mixed race, Black, Asian, just all there, really trying to find these liberation tools and utilize them in a safe and accessible place. And so that was a catalyst. When we went to go report out to our funders and our fiduciary, what we did, there were people crying in the room. The CEO of our local regional United Way at the time really encouraged us to start a nonprofit. We were just trying to do something fun for our community, and then it went into this. And so 10 years later, here we are making no money for the first, I don't know, 6 years, and having other jobs and continuing to do the work. And now managing a budget of over $1 million and really trying to inform this work and ripple it out into the community in a really strong web. And so on top of yoga and dance, at the exact same time that we were planning this, I was joining my one of my mentors in birth work. She was a home birth midwife, and I was following her around to home births and supporting her as a midwife assistant. And she encouraged me to include that work inside the nonprofit. And so I just always think of my mentor, Janice, so much because of her way of being with the land and with the people and with the animals and the herbs, and how she encouraged us to lean into our African heritage, as minuscule as it is, and bring along the land and the people that we have that we're living on here, Anishinaabe land that grows all these resources, and how to incorporate yoga, dance, and birth. And I tell you, it was a hard lift at the beginning. So we didn't get any money because we just couldn't articulate in a way that funders wanted to give us money. And then we just kept refining our story, refining our programming, becoming better and better until here we are today with this very thriving nonprofit that offers living wage jobs to all of our employees and family-friendly work environment and a decolonized way of being with each other.
And I absolutely love how, it was an accident. I'm doing air quotes for those of you that can't see. And, and that you just stayed with the inspiration that was coming through you. It is not easy to start a side gig, especially a nonprofit,
Right.
while you're still having to work and feed yourself and your family, and just to continue to do that, and to do it when you're not getting the funding. Like when people are not saying yes, it would have been so easy just to be like, okay, I'm just going to let this go. But you didn't let it go. Why do you feel like you didn't let it go?
I love that question. And this is where I get real woo-woo.
Oh, bring it on, honey. Oh, you're in the right place.
my sister cousin Heather and I, it was spring break of 2015. Her eldest and my youngest are 4 months apart. We sent them to LA to visit her son's father and my father, my son's grandfather, for spring break. She had two younger sons, and I was like, you know what, let's just jump in my van and just drive to Florida and chase the sun. And she was like, okay, what do we had very minimal. I mean, we were scraping the pennies together on the ride back. That last gas stop on the way home was like, we better make it. It was such a profound experience for her and I and her two youngest sons. And it kind of re-infused our why. Just leaving town, kind of getting out of town and being with nature fully. The ocean is powerful, as we know, and just really talking about our why. Should we start or should we continue? Should we stop? We were, coming up on year 4, 5. And so we were just really curious about how to move forward with that. We get back home and I open the mailbox after dropping her and her family off. I go home, open the mailbox, and we had our nonprofit status inside of the mail. And that was like the first sign from the world that, no, here's your official nonprofit status after doing this work without one for a few years with fiscal sponsors. Go. And I made a lot of big life changes that year too. And I started working with a local woman who did intuitive work. And she just kept feeding me, like, you're on the right path, stay with it, keep going. And I really respect others who can see me and give me advice. I have a lot of wonderful friends and mentors who truly see who I am and can help kind of guide. And I just had a lot of people say, please keep going. What you're offering is so amazing. Keep going, keep going. And so I just lean into community care. I lean into collectivism. And so if I have enough people saying you should do the thing, I just kind of roll with it. Fast forward 5 years later, the top of COVID, I'm in a training with Daniel Four of Ancestral Lineage Healing, and we receive our first substantial, huge grant. So not only am I now building relationship with my ancestors in a very kind and benevolent way, I receive a huge grant that really informs how we can move forward with our programming and work. And so since then, it's been like, I'm going to tune into people who love and respect me and see me and my why, and the people now gathered around me, my team, and I really tune into my ancestors. It's like one of my major tools for knowing right way of being. I'm in relationship with people who are of a different dimensions, who can see the bigger picture, who can maybe condense time or collapse time and give me more information. So that's my really woo-woo way of saying, every time I try to stop, my ancestors are like, keep going. That's pretty much what it is.
And it's like you
And
started
then,
with the biggest ancestor of all, like Grandmother Ocean, and to step away
yes,
from the busyness of your life, to step outside of that and just be with the sun and the power of the ocean, to give yourself
yes.
perspective. And then when you come back, you have that beautiful sign right there.
Yeah.
And I love how you lean into community and allow people to really show you who you are, and your willingness to see that through their eyes and to listen to them telling you, please keep going, because the ancestors are
Mhm.
whispering through them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think if you lean into some authenticity and vulnerability with as much protection as you can, we're in a very cancel culture time, but I'm feel so supported by my ancestors and my mentors and elders and peers that I really lean into vulnerability and authenticity, and I say the thing. And sometimes it makes people very uncomfortable, but most times it allows people to match that or reflect that and lean in also. And I think that way of being has allowed people to feel safe in my presence, or allow them to really see and hear me in a way that I don't know if I didn't do those practices, it could happen.
Yeah, because it's not easy. I mean, it takes a lot of courage and bravery to be vulnerable and authentic at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really understand how we think that we could do one without the other, but
Right.
but in our culture, like you said, it can feel very threatening, especially for women. And yeah, and just to be able to, I'm going to do, this is who I am and this is what I'm offering. So it kind of leads me to the next question is like, what does like real freedom and liberation mean to you? Is it the vulnerability and the authenticity, or is it more than that?
It's definitely that. And I think it's just this deep knowing that no matter what happens, I am still going to be okay.
Mm,
And I think also having lived experience of experiencing really deep suffering and coming out the other side has given me a reminder that no matter what I'm suffering, on the other side, I'm going to be okay. And so I think that is the main thing I need to hold on to. A reminder that I am a soul in a human body having a lived experience, not a human being with a soul, right? I'm a soul first that has a human body having a human experience. And that reminder, I think, is what keeps me going.
yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. And I love no matter what happens, no matter how much I'm suffering in this moment, I'm going to be okay on the other side of this.
That's
I'm going
right.
to be okay. And, it's so easy to become so identified with our body and our environment, but this idea that I am a soul. And I always, in my yoga classes, and I always say, like, the body is just leverage to the soul. That's it.
That's right. That's
It's
right.
just leverage. And
Mhm.
so I would love to hear how we can, leverage our lived experience, leverage this human experience and the tools that we could use to actually feel the liberation of the soul when we come back after this break. So if you're listening, you can definitely check out Kama's website, but don't go anywhere though. You can Google while you're waiting for us to come back. So it's Rootead, ROOTEAD.org, and we'll be right back after this short break.
All right, good segment, all clear. Back in two.
Thank you, Matt. How do you feel about that first segment?
Awesome.
Oh,
How do you
good.
feel?
I feel
Yeah,
good. Yeah.
good. I have a bit of a runny nose. I'm gonna run and grab a little tissue.
Okay. And so if you're listening in the Facebook group, if you want to drop a question for Kama, she won't be able to stay with us after the show. She has a panel to go to right after this. But if you drop your questions in, we can definitely answer them. I can invite Kama into the Facebook group to answer the questions when she has space and time available.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the great thing about doing this on Zoom, I can mute myself when my nose is runny. A lot of our listeners on our Facebook group are from Central Virginia as well. So we're all
Mm.
experiencing the beauty of spring and all the pollen.
Oh yeah, it's that time.
It is. So I just try to say, oh, look how beautiful all that yellow is everywhere.
Beautiful yellow powder.
Yes. Yeah, which is creating so much more beauty for us throughout the year and the next season. Okay, so when we come back, we can maybe talk about some of those tools.
Hmm.
And I don't know, we'll just see where it goes. I think this is super easy conversation to have with you. So we'll let it we have a framework of questions, but if there's anything in particular you definitely want to touch on, just feel free to.
I don't have an agenda. I'll follow your lead.
Okay. I just love that. I don't have an agenda.
All right,
Okay,
coming
here we
back.
go.
You're listening to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Have a question for Lynsie or her guests? Want to share your story? Email Lynsie at thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. That's thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. Now back to the show. Here again is Lynsie.
Welcome back to Women Thriving Unapologetically. We are here with Kama Tai or Tai. I would practice your name over and over again because I was telling you before the show that Tai was one of my closest friends, and in high school. And then I thought I heard someone pronounce your middle name Tay. And I was like, oh my God, I have to practice this over and over again so I don't say Ty. And then right before the show, you're like, no, it is Ty. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to mess this up.
It's all
So,
good.
and then I just had, prophecy there and it came true. So thank you, Kama, for your grace with me butchering your name. So anyways,
Okay.
right before the show, when they first asked me to do live radio, I was like, how many times am I going to put my foot in my mouth during the show? I thought this might just be like more like a comedy show. But it's just, this is not rehearsed. This is just a conversation that we're having between two people. So I'd love to jump right back into, we were talking before the break about this idea of liberation and what that really feels like, and how one way that we can feel more liberated is by being more vulnerable and being authentic, but in a space where we feel that we can do that. I mean, we don't want to do that in a space where we're not going to go out there in these spaces that are unsafe or are, where we know we're going to get attacked, because then that can just create, a lived experience of trauma that's not going to be supportive of us. And so, you have lots of tools that you use, and I would love to hear some of the ones that you do for yourself, as well as share with the people in your community.
Oh, where do I start? Well, I'll start with what I've already spoke about, the ancestors, of course. Knowing that you have people in your corner, whether they're in their human form or not, gives a lot of energy to what you're trying to do and how you're moving in the world. So definitely huge tool. Breath work, pranayama, a tool that I use throughout the whole day, first thing in the morning, last thing I do before I go to bed. Keeps my lungs healthy, and it keeps my nervous system really regulated. So there's so many different types of breath work that we can do. So I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole, but we'll just leave it at that for people to research. And then embodied practices that regulate the vagal nerve, that regulate the parasympathetic nervous system. All of those that I'm gleaning and learning from different ways. And then I think being healing informed or trauma informed, understanding that every single human has suffering. It's part of the human experience, and meeting people where they're at in that space. I was saying to my director of operations yesterday, I said, the hierarchy of human value is something I'm an abolitionist about. That's my abolition work. To me, my time, how I move in the world, she has a 4-year-old autistic son. I said, my time is no more valuable than your 4-year-old autistic son. His lived human experience is just as valuable as mine. And something that I learned deeply from one of my mentors is our way of being in relationship with nature. So we spoke about my travels, like, let's go to the ocean, to my sister, my cousin. We got to get to the ocean. She has answers. She has negative ions. She will regulate our systems in this long Michigan winter coming out the end of it, please. Your relationship to nature. I think, unfortunately, in a colonized society, we have been kind of stripped or boxed in a little bit more, and we forget that we are of nature. It's not for us to consume and use, but it's for us to be in relationship to. And so that is a huge tool for me, my relationship to all aspects of nature and my respect for all aspects of nature. And again, looking at the symbiotic movement of bees or ants and how they collectively work together for the greater good, and really using that as a framework to how you can be in the world to undo this extreme cultural individualism that is killing us all. And so, one of my mentors said to me in yoga training years ago, if you identify as a human in the whole timeline of humanity, your life is like a minuscule grain of sand on the ocean. What are you going to do with it? And so that is a tool, remembering that your life is short, you came for a reason, and what are you going to do with the tool that is called your life? And how do you show up every day in order to be in right relationship with yourself and right relationship with everybody else? those are like some of the main tools that I lean on to every day. I like a sleep and eat schedule too. I feel like it's very good for the body to maintain its nervous system when you eat and sleep as much as you can in accordance to your natural needs for your body. They're different for everybody, so I'm not going to give a timeline. Which allows you to be more in sync with your natural surroundings. So should I keep going? Though I'll stop there.
I mean, this is great. I mean, I guess we could have a whole nother show just about each one of these and break it down. But, you know, you started with the ancestors, really connecting with them. And maybe we can touch on how we could do that, because I think that might be a new concept for a lot of people. But, you know, pranayama, the breathing techniques, so valuable for helping to regulate the nervous systems, as well as the embodied practices, so that we remember that we have a body, but we are a soul.
That's right.
And then just informing yourself about trauma and how that every single person on this earth is walking with some variation form of lived trauma, or even, you know, intergenerational trauma.
Right.
And then this relationship to nature, so important that we are of nature. And as we're coming up on Earth Day, it's a beautiful time to even reflect on that, because that Earth is not here for us to consume and use, but to really be in relationship. And I loved how when you were starting to talk about, you know, what are we going to do with this minuscule moment in time of our life? Because some people would immediately like, oh, I'm going to do everything I can to acquire and accumulate as much.
Right.
But no, like, align yourself with nature, with your soul, and then what is the right thing for you to do and to share with this one life. So I really appreciated you sharing that piece, because with me, when you're like, oh, you only have this one life, there's this urgency that comes up, but then you're like, no, breathe, align, and then feel into what is the soul's guidance in this moment. Not what the culture is telling you.
That's right. The culture is go, urgent, go, seek, get, do. But humans need to be, what is it? Bring to you. You know, it's not about going to get, it's about what are you attracting by how you're living, how you're being. That's a huge reframe that I think is really tricky in our capitalistic culture. We are swimming in these waters that we have to participate in, but where do you find the balance? So you're only participating enough. You know, I have to participate in capitalism, even though I consider myself an anti-capitalist. I don't have a choice. And then as I'm doing that, I want to make sure that I'm doing it with the best integral practices that are not by 1850s lawmakers from 1850, but for humans, and push back on those things and interrogate our way of being inside of capitalism all the time. That is a huge tool for liberation. Just interrogate all things that come in your path, instead of being just a person that takes in the information and believes it. Really interrogate your own beliefs, interrogate the information you're getting. I think that is a huge tool for liberation, lifelong learning. I say to my doula clients, you know, when they're screaming about, am I going to be a good mom if they're first time parents? Am I going to be a good dad? Am I going to be a good parent? I don't know what I'm doing. Help, help, help. I just always remind them that soul knew what they were getting into. And it's every single time a sperm meets an ovum, it's an intense miracle. It's miraculous. The chances of you having a healthy baby are 1 in somehow 2 million, I think. And so I think that I want to remind them that it's not about what you do, it's about how you are to help the soul be who they are. And so I think that's a huge liberatory way of thinking too. I don't have to do anything to create something. I have to be something to attract what's best for me, in alignment with my community, my people, my universe.
I can't tell you how many times, like, you were talking about that full body yes at the beginning. And here, there's so many things that you've been saying that I'm getting a full body yes. Like, my body starts to like vibrate. I get little tears in the corners of my eyes, because that's a yes for me. And I'm just like, oh, that is just absolutely so beautiful. and a constant reminder. I mean, I have to remind myself of this all the time. And I've been doing this work for 15 plus years. And I still a daily reminder that it's just a state of being. And
Yes.
that at a deep soul level, I'm already enough. I just have to
Yes.
tap back into that and
That
feel
part.
it, and then
Mhm.
stop trying so hard. And we have to constantly, like you said, what did you say, interrogate our belief
Mhm.
systems, because it's
Mhm.
like, is this belief even true? And where
Right.
the hell did I get this belief from? Who taught
Right.
me this? And who taught that? And who taught the person that taught me? And who taught the person
That
that taught
part.
you?
Because if you go back far enough, you're going to realize that it was just one person's imagination. One human, I have this thing I think is a thing, and I'm going to make it a thing. And if you go back far enough, everything comes from someone's imagination.
Yeah. So why
Yeah,
not use our own imagination to create
that's right.
something that's what we really want it to
Mhm.
be?
Mhm.
So thank you for that.
Mhm.
And so I'm just curious, like your organization has grown so much and you've expanded to offer all these other services. And obviously you feel inspired to do this. And we, oftentimes looking out at the world, we can get really caught up and like feeling hopeless and feeling like there's not a whole lot we can do. How do you just stay like in this place? I mean, you've talked about ancestry and breath, but what can you tell other people out there like that are struggling with this idea that they can do anything? Like
Mm.
anything that they do is really going to have any impact on our world.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I'm human too, so I definitely can't stay in that space.
Yeah.
I live with imposter syndrome. I live with doubt. I have some fears. I've worked through a lot of shame and fear in my iteration of this life, but they still pop up. Old thought patterns pop up. So I think that what my main go-to is I've been saying this thing lately that time is queer. And so I think that living on a non-linear thought thinking that things are not linear is really helpful to move yourself out of a way of being or a thing that is holding you down or keeping you stuck, is to look at time in a different way. I'm not waiting to get here to do the thing. I'm just going to do the thing or be the thing. And I think that's a really helpful way of reframe for people to not get stuck or afraid, or let it hold back, that even if you don't do it today and you thought you need to do it, it's going to come up again. So there's like something in yoga we call, I can't remember the Sanskrit name, but it's like, if you don't go through the thing, go through the fire, you're going to have another opportunity for it to keep coming back to you, keep coming back to you, keep coming back to you. So I think something around what's coming up for me, Lynsie, is something around not avoiding the thing and going through the thing, knowing that the fire will cleanse, recalibrate, recenter. It's like that whole analogy around the phoenix. But if you constantly are flying around it or going around it, you're just going to have another opportunity to to try again, to go through it. I'm fumbling a little bit. Do you think you say it better,
No,
Cecilia?
I no, I mean, I think you're doing a beautiful job, and I don't feel like I articulated the question great, so I think we're doing really
Mm,
good here. Like we're fumbling our way through. No, I think it's really beautiful in the sense that, and I can't remember the Sanskrit term either. We should have Karina on the show with us to guide us. So Karina was a guest back on March 2nd. And actually Karina referred Kama to the show. So I appreciate that. But it's this idea that, we hear this all the time, that life is going to constantly present these lessons for you. And there is a teaching in yoga that says like our fate is determined by how many breaths that we're going to take, and also by the lessons that we need to learn. And if we want to live a more fulfilled life and not waste time, we might as well just go ahead and live those lessons instead of constantly having to come back over and over and over again. And with all the suffering that comes with that, just go ahead and go through it.
that's
Like you
right.
said, cleanse yourself, be purified by that fire, and come out on the
Mhm.
other side and be like, okay, what's
Yes,
the next lesson? Bring
that's
it,
right.
because now I'm more fortified.
That's right.
Yeah.
You said it better. Thank you.
I love that the analogy of the phoenix. Just if you can fly around it or you can go through it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
Mhm.
and so I'd love to talk about a little bit about birth justice because it's something we haven't talked about on our show yet. And so can you
Mhm.
explain to our listeners who may not know what is birth justice?
Sure. I'm going to give my definition
Okay.
based on the work that we do in community. There's probably quite a few definitions out there. But what we like to say is justice should be something that you're born into, not something you have to claim throughout your life, period.
Mm,
That's it. And so for us, how do we set up pregnant people and families to be advocates for themselves, understand medicalese language, empower themselves, understand their body and what it's going through to grow a baby, to have a baby, and understanding all the things that could come up while pregnant, while in postpartum. Our job is to completely and totally educate the client as much as possible so they have this sense of autonomy, agency, and knowing and empowerment before they have the baby. And then build a good enough relationship with the family that they can lean on us after the baby for resources and needs and become part of our village. That's why the beginning of our mission says reclaiming the village, because one of my very first birth work teachers outside of my mentor came from the Zulu tribe of South Africa. And in their tradition and way of being, a pregnant person has the baby and is taken care of extremely well. They have nothing to do for 40 days and 40 nights, but just heal. And all the mothers, aunties, and sisters care for her and the baby in the village.
mm.
And that is something, again, that colonization and capitalism has taken away from us. And so part of our work is to reclaim that aspect of village being. Something I always say to my clients, I say to my coworkers, I say to my team, use your resources. We are indoctrinated thinking we have to be hypervigilant and hyper independent and make sure that we look strong and can do all the things. Why? Why be in more suffering when you have a whole village and you have all these resources that you can lean on? And that is my why around birth justice. I would like every baby that is born in our community and beyond to not have to come out of the womb full of stress hormones and ready to fight the world.
Yeah. And as you mentioned in the very beginning, it's that toxic individualism that is really killing us all. And, I know I'm not a mother, but I know plenty of women that are, and that how flippin' exhausted they are. And they do feel because that they have to do it all on their own. And if they're not
That's
doing it
right.
on their own, then it's indicative of the fact that they're not good enough again. And it's just that constant toxic belief system that is really
Yes.
just keeping not just women, but women, in the BIPOC community, the LGBTQIA community, we're all just being kept in this cycle of exhaustion, depletion, which keeps us oppressed.
That's right.
And so I really, really love that you're creating community. And it's something that's actually fairly new to me, like only a few years, because I was swept up in that toxic individualism. I didn't even know what it was, but I was a part
Mm,
of it, feeling like I had
mhm,
to do all the things by myself. And if I couldn't do it by
mhm,
myself, then I must be failing or not good
mhm,
enough, or all those beliefs.
mhm.
And then through my practices of yoga and branching more deeply into the Tantra yoga lineage, I started to realize, oh, like, wait a second. It started to, the dawning of Aquarius song came in my head, and I know that's not right.
We are in that time though.
I know there's something of an awakening. So I'm like, oh, it's the community. And so this is one of the
Yeah.
reasons behind this radio show is how can we start to build community? How can I create something that really brings in these amazing women that can share their gifts, their resources, their
That's right.
support, their community, so that we can see that we're all in this and together. We don't all have to be the same and doing the same things in order to live fully and thrive freely. So,
Mhm.
um, and with that, I'm looking at our voice sound engineer is telling us that we need to go to a break. But when we come back, we'll go right back into this amazing conversation. And if you're still with us, check out the Her Festival. This is an extraordinary gathering of women that's happening May 4th through 8th in the wild, inviting mountains of Rangeley, Maine. And this is all about restoring and replenishing your essential nature as you're being fully immersed in nature. And it's really led by 6 incredible women, 5 of which have actually been on Women Thriving Unapologetically. And so it's a co-creative retreat experience that it will be truly unique and radiant celebration of feminine power and leadership. So I'm going to be going there to immerse myself. So I hope to see many of you there. So we'll be right back after this short break.
Okay, great job. All clear. Back in 2.
Thank you, Matt.
That sounds like an amazing retreat. When is it?
May 4th through 8th.
Nice.
Come join us.
I'll be in St. Croix. Thank you, though.
Oh, now I want to go to St. Croix.
My brother lives there with his wife and 4 children, and so I try to go every year to see my nibblings. So I'll be down there the 2nd through the 12th.
I love how you call them nibblings.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I would have to encourage my brother to move somewhere nice like that. Although I would miss him. We're very close.
Yeah, I miss them immensely. I beg them all the time to move back, but their blood is too thin now.
Yeah, I imagine going to St. Croix back to Michigan. Like I'd be like, heck no. So we have a short segment coming up. This is the shortest one. So is there anything that you feel like you would really want the listeners to know? And we can just kind of dive into that. And I'd love to also maybe hear what, and we've probably already touched on this, but what thriving unapologetically means to you as well.
Let's just talk about that.
Okay, let's talk about that. Yeah.
Again, I don't have an agenda.
Okay.
So whatever comes up.
I like to ask because sometimes, like as we're talking, things can come forward, and so
yeah.
Okay, coming back in 10.
Thank you.
You are listening to Women Thriving Unapologetically with Lynsie McKeown. Have a question for Lynsie or her guests? Want to share your story? Email Lynsie at thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. That's thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. Now back to the show. Here again is Lynsie.
Welcome back to Women Thriving Unapologetically. We're here with Kama Tai Mitchell. And gosh, this has been such a rich conversation. And there, right before we came back on, I was like, oh, I know something I really want to ask you, because this is something I struggle with. How do you stay in love, like, with all of life? Because you said you stay, like in your bio, you say, I stay in love with the splendor of all life. How do you do this when life is just so challenging and so many of our systems are broken?
Definitely nature. I feel like the splendor of it is so out of people's vantage points in general. I think when you have to put your nose to the grind to survive, if you're specifically in survival mode and all you can think about is paying the bills and taking care of your family and getting through, it's really hard to take a pause, step back and notice all the splendor of nature. And that includes the humans. Humans are of nature too in your life, and the animals are all the things. And so anytime I feel like I'm spiraling out, or I feel like my mind's on repeat of analytical repeat, or stuck in logic, I do whatever I can to drop into the heart and then do an embodied practice, depending on the situation, and I get to nature. I mean, even in the winter, I was in my backyard, a couple inches of snow, digging through and trying to ground my feet, bare feet. in the winter of Michigan for what a colleague in the community did that all winter. And I was like, that's dope. I'm doing that. That's really helpful to me. And to remind myself that the good green earth is still underneath all this gray snow. If I feel really caught up in the ways of being that are part of this culture, I just go in the backyard, I find something, or I recognize my dog or one of my children or an infant that I helped welcome into the world, or I tap in with the ancestors and I just remind myself that I'm not doing it alone. I'm not doing it alone. I think, I don't know if you've heard of the book Emergent Strategy by Adrienne Marie Brown. Powerful book that gives a whole insight around animism and how to look to nature for some of these answers. And there's a term we use at Rootead called flocking. And so if you move like a flock, I'm the leader. I know the guideposts where we're going, but when I get tired, I need to be able to come into the back and let someone else take the lead and rest. Like a geese or a bird's flying, we're all on the same page, but that doesn't mean I have to be in this hierarchical way of being. That is a reminder to me of reclaiming the village, being in collective community care, knowing I'm not doing this alone. So nature and remembering I'm not alone are my answers.
And you don't have to do it alone.
You don't have to.
You don't have to.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So tell me then, what does thriving unapologetically mean to you? And you can tell me what thriving means and what unapologetic mean, or what the two of them together mean for you, but I'm curious.
Yeah, that big grant I was telling you about, that first really big one, substantial one, the tagline or my way of writing this grant was a huge thing that my staff and marketing have constantly reused is, in order for us to have a healing, healthy community, we have to shift mindsets from surviving to thriving. And I think that goes back to what we've been talking about, this individualism, this thinking that capitalism is the answer, getting more money is the answer, is the antithesis to thriving to me. Thriving is me, I'm in right relationship with myself, all other aspects of nature, that is thriving. When I recognize that I am here for a purpose, regardless of all the suffering or pain, I remember the joy. And remembering the joy brings us to the liberation. So that's what thriving means to me, an abundant mindset of collectivism, knowing that the people that are in my circle all have the same purpose of liberation. That's thriving. Unapologetically is so easy because I'm in my late 40s. Something happens in the system. And so unapologetically is I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to be honest and truthful, and I'm also going to be in my full humanity when I'm trying to say the thing, do the thing. And I think that some people think unapologetically is like, I'm going to be brutally honest and just like go in. Could be, but in my mind, it's like I'm going to be as honest as I can with compassion, care, and love. Knowing that unapologetically, I might hurt your feelings, but feelings are like clouds, they pass. And once those feelings have passed, let's get to the work of being unapologetic together. So I think that's my definition of unapologetically.
So powerful. And I feel the same way as you do about it. The unapologetic piece isn't a power over kind of
That's right.
pushing or an aggressiveness.
That's
It's
right.
more, for me, it's like, okay, I'm listening to my inner guidance.
That's right.
Very much attuned to her and allowing her to take the lead. So I'm no longer apologizing to my own heart.
Love that.
And so that, because it's so easy to do, like, because then all the toxic beliefs come in, oh, I'm not good enough, or I don't have enough time, I don't have enough money, all that old story. I was telling my partner the other day, I'm just like, I'm just so tired of my story. Like, it's so freaking boring and I'm just done. And I was like, just really just what is the new story? And how can I just really and live with that abundance mindset, as you mentioned. And I love how your unapologetic is like, okay, I'm going to be authentic. Your feelings might be hurt, but I'm sharing this with you from a very loving and compassionate place. So you're speaking your truth, you're acting
Mhm.
through your inner guidance in a way that is not coming from an egoic place or a place of
Right,
woundedness where like, oh, I just want to say this to hurt you. Sometimes we're like, what does
right.
speaking your truth mean? Speaking your truth doesn't mean to like hurt somebody.
That's right. That's right.
It means to be like, to be able to
Mhm.
say what you need to say in a vulnerable, very authentic way with compassion and
That's
love
right.
and tenderness. So thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that.
But I also feel like even if your intention is not to hurt someone, you still can.
Oh yeah.
And so
And you
being
can't.
human enough, you can't control how other people
Yeah.
feel. So I think it's being in your humanity enough to say, I'm sorry if I hurt you, or I apologize, or whatever that is for the repair, because it's never that. You don't want to intentionally or unintentionally hurt anybody, but that's what humans do. And I think that's part of the human experience,
Yeah.
that you're going to hurt people because you are human. If not, you'd be an ancestor or a tree. I don't know. Trees still hurt people. They still hurt people. They fall.
Yeah. Well, and it's just like like you said, we cannot control how other people respond. And it's really what lens they're viewing life through is going to dictate how they receive the messages.
Yeah.
And so we can't control that. We just can control how the messages that we're offering and how we're offering them. And so what is the final message that you would want to offer our listeners today?
Mm. I think just that message of you have a unique individual way of being in the world, but remember the difference between unique individuality and individualism.
Mm,
I think that's the seed I would like to plant for our viewers and listeners.
yes.
Mhm.
Gosh, you give me another full body yes.
Awesome.
Such a very important distinction between your uniqueness and the toxic individualism for sure.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so how can our listeners reach out and connect with you?
Rooted.org. Go to our website,
With an A.
send a message with an A. Thank you, Lynsie. With an A. We have a pretty strong Instagram and Facebook presence. We're the only organization that we found spelled that way, so we're easy to find, which is part of the marketing ploy in the beginning. So Instagram, Facebook, our website. I'm Kama at rooted.org. Real simple. If you have a specific question you want to get right to me, happy to answer. And if I miss it, my assistant will catch it. Yeah. And come to Kalamazoo and see our beautiful space. It's very welcoming. We're open to whoever wants to come through, maybe come dance with us, practice a little yoga, or just sit in one of our hammocks and have some tea.
Mm. So Kalamazoo is not high on my list of places I've wanted to go, but now you're making me want to come visit Kalamazoo just so I can give you a big hug and be in your presence and experience your community. So thank you
Well,
so much. Oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
Well, just so you know, we're right in between Detroit and Chicago. So if you're in either place, it's not too far of a drive.
Okay. Those weren't all high on my list either, but
I tried.
but I know Michigan is beautiful in the summertime. I do know that.
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm. It's the
Well,
place to be.
yeah. So thank you
Mhm.
so much for being here. I really appreciate all that you're doing and all you're bringing into the world and just saying yes to that full body, yes to the guidance of your ancestors. We're all being blessed by your willingness to do so. So thank you so much.
Thank
And
you,
so,
Lynsie.
yeah. So if you're listening, this is Lynsie McKeown with Women Thriving Unapologetically. And we'll be back here next week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 7 a.m. Pacific. And if you have any questions for me, I'm very much accessible. You can send me an email at thrivingunapologetically@gmail.com. It's kind of hard to say or to write out, but you'll figure it out. Google it. Much love and many blessings until next time.
Awesome job today. Good show. We're all clear.
Thank you, Matt.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to stop the live stream and I'm going to stop the recording.